I'd like to thank the people at the Shuttleworth Foundation for their hard work and the opportunity to apply for one of their fellowships. In this video, I'm going to tell you a bit about who I am and why I am passionate about open source qualitative data analysis, which from now on I will refer to as QDA, but I promise that's the only acronym you'll need to remember. To begin, let me welcome you to my home in the beautiful Tingle Forest at Nornalup on the south coast of Western Australia. This is where I live, and thanks to the miracle of the internet, this is where I work for clients both locally and around the world. My passion for open source QDA stems from different strands in my professional life and personal interests. The first of these is computer software, which I loved from my first experience as a child in the mid-1970s. I did a degree in computer science in the 1980s and worked for many years as a software engineer. At some point in the late 1990s, I discovered Linux, and with it the world of free and open source software. I never looked back. Instead, I looked forward and around, inquisitive and never satisfied. I became involved with what has been called the ultra-globalization movement, and from there developed a keen interest in the world of politics and economics. This led me to undertake a doctorate in international relations. The reference for my thesis is in my resume and also on the screen right now. It was while I was doing the research for my PhD that I discovered QDA software, and almost as quickly became very disappointed with its failure to live up to its promise. At a presentation I attended by the makers of the most popular product, who, like me, were based in Melbourne, I learned that the developers had taken the Microsoft road of building a monolithic application that could only be operated through a graphical interface. It only ran under Windows, no Mac, no Linux. The files it produced were in a completely opaque format. The software was really slow and quite painful to use for real-world work, but it did the job, more or less. With my enthusiasm for open source software, I decided against using the product, whose name shall remain unspoken, but did have a play with one open source QDA project, which has now been discontinued. In the end, I just used ad hoc approaches, essentially embedding codes into the files where I typed my notes, then using desktop searches to locate those codes. It worked, but only just. Since completing my doctorate in 2012, I've continued my love-hate relationship with commercial QDA software, as well as working on my own open source projects. There are some links on the screen, and these are also in my resume. I have developed relationships with other people around the world who share my interest in open source QDA. Together, we are looking at ways of taking this project forward. My application for a Shuttleworth Fellowship is one of those ways. As has become increasingly evident over the last few years, the internet has led not only to the democratization of information, but to its fragmentation and the disintegration of common standards, or in other words, the proliferation of what some have called fake news. One important response to this situation has been to invite and enable open discussion of all the information that is out there. This of course generates yet more information, further growing the problem of sifting through that information. One way of addressing this problem is by using the reputation of the source of the information as a basis for judgment. This is the approach taken by the web annotation tool Hypothesis, the subject of a former Shuttleworth Fellowship. My idea uses a slightly different and complementary approach. Rather than using community peer review, in other words a kind of popular vote to judge the value of an input, it offers contributors to a debate a mechanism to demonstrate the correctness of their argument in an open and transparent way. In this way, it seeks to resurrect the old-fashioned idea of truth with a capital T, and in doing so, offer a means of communication between information silos. My goal is to hold those who draw conclusions from complex material, such as human speech, works of art, and so forth, to standards comparable to those who deal in numbers and measurements. This means, firstly, enabling them to share their data in a format that others can easily read. Next, I want researchers to share the steps that led from the data to their conclusions. In other words, the analysis itself should be presented in a simple manner that lets readers understand it precisely and verify it by repeating it themselves. By enabling analysis of qualitative data in an open, transparent and repeatable manner, I want to contribute to a world in which we can distinguish matters of truth from those of value. The important distinction is that truth is something to which we can aspire, approach incrementally and sometimes achieve, while values are things about which legitimate disagreement will always exist. If we can work together toward truth, including awareness of exactly which matters we genuinely disagree about, the world will be a better place. Thank you once again for considering my application.